On this episode of Sega Talk, we are taking a trip to the dark side as we talk about Sega's answer to Mortal Kombat, aka Eternal Champions. We will look at the extreme character designs, talk about the crazy spin-offs, canceled titles, and did you know that Eternal Champions had its own slushy flavor? All this and more on Sega Talk.
Sega Bits presents Sega Talk, a podcast talking all things Sega! With your hosts, George and Barry.
Look, it's a giant talking egg. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the master here. So what?
Hello and welcome to Sega Talk, episode number 95, getting closer to that 100. I'm your host, George. And like always, with me is Barry.
I was trying to send ESP through, but it didn't work.
Oh,
I don't know. Hello.
Is that what you were trying to do?
Well, I just thought with all the game we're covering, it feels like it's a lot of cool guys with superhuman abilities, and I got nothing.
That's true. That's true. This is, I don't know if there's a lot of like cool guys with like, you know, that kind of power, but there's a lot of immortals in this episode. Well, let's get into it. On this episode, we're going to be doing a diving deep to the dark side as we cover Eternal Champions on this Patreon pick. And like always, if you want to support the show and you want to make us talk about games you want us to talk about, you could always
force us.
Yeah, force us. You can check us out on patreon.com/SegaBits. This episode was picked by Joaquin Branch. He did not send us memories, but usually if you pick an episode, your memories will be read before us. Since I'm sure he's going to... I already know what he's going to say. This game is fantastic. It has great characters, great stories, great history. It was Sega's Mortal Kombat, right? So let's get some info about this game before we get into our memories. Eternal Champions was a 1993 fighting game developed by Sega Interactive and published by Sega. One of the most notable things about this game, it was developed during a time in Sega's history where they were trying to get this like American side established, trying to get their own image out there. Some of the titles that pioneered the American side of Sega were Toe Jam and Earl, Comic Zone, Vector Man. Eternal Champions also tried to capitalize on the fighting game genre, which kind of started, you know, getting really big in 1991 with Street Fighter 2, and then later with Mortal Kombat in 1992, and then this came out the year after, so it kind of makes sense. So, Barry, what's your history with Eternal Champions, and what do you think about the franchise now?
My history, I don't really know if I have one, but it's a game I've always seen, but never really got into. I would see it at the video stores. I'd see ads for it. And we've discussed in the past how, you know, as a kid in the early 90s, sometimes you weren't really aware of who made what game. I mean, sure, you could look on the box and see like a Capcom or a Sega, but were kids really that invested in like publishers and developers, or did they just play what looked interesting to them? And then years later, they were like, oh, that was a first-party game? Oh, the guy who made... you know, Comic Zone, you know, like there's a connection there. I didn't know that. I mean, to be quite honest, even in the mid to late 2000s, I was like confused as to why stuff like the Ooze was on the Sonic Mega Collection. Like I wasn't aware of what STI was. So I'll be honest, like Eternal Champions was just like another Sega fighting game. I wasn't really into Mortal Kombat, so I wasn't really into this game, but I did buy the sequel to Eternal Champions some time ago, and again, showing my ignorance, I thought it was just Eternal Champions on Sega CD, so I thought I was just buying the first game.
I think
so. Whoops.
You know what? And with the way Sega CD works, you know, they had like Shining Force CD. They had other ones where it was just the Genesis game on the Sega CD. So like, if I bought it, I would think the same thing you did if I didn't know.
Right.
It's more like an expansion, I would say. I don't want to get into it because I do have some notes about it, but I would say the game is the same thing as with you. I didn't really have I've seen it because it was so advertised at the time that you had to see it sometime, right? And we'll get more into the advertisement, but I remember the ad for it. I actually remember kind of wanting it growing up because I was kind of into like Killer Instinct. I thought was sick. I thought Mortal Kombat was cool because it was the game your parents and the news were like, don't buy this game. This game is not for kids. And obviously as a kid, you're like, this is the game I want for Christmas. So that was for me, Mortal Kombat. What was your parents' opinion on Mortal Kombat? Because there was kind of like a craze during this time to be telling kids, don't buy these violent games.
You know, that's a good question. I mean, I don't ever recall my parents telling me not to play it. I remember going to friends' houses and playing it. And I remember it being, you know, one of those kind of taboo games. But I also played Wolfenstein 3D on our computer at home, and my dad played that and loved it. So, I mean, shooting Nazis and, like, visible blood and stuff, like, you know, I guess Mortal Kombat probably was not a huge deal for them. I think they were maybe happy that I wasn't too into it. Just, I wasn't turned off by it. It was just that I just never sought it out. I was like, oh, I like Sonic. You know?
Yeah.
This is how it was.
Yeah. Me, it was like, I was kind of disappointed with Mortal Kombat. I felt like it was a little overrated. Like, I think when you said, like, those ID soft games, those early ones, I think those were more violent than anything Mortal Kombat did. But then again, when I did get a copy of it or did play it at home, not in the arcade, I played it on Super Nintendo. So, of course, I was going to be super disappointed at that point, right?
Right. Super Nintendo is a super disappointment.
Uh-oh. Yeah, pretty much. Let me fix the pictures because I screwed them up. But outside of that, I remember it having, like, really bad controllers. That was when I finally did get to play it. I was actually kind of disappointed. And you know what? When I went online and I looked at people talking about it, one of their more disappointing things was basically the art style. A lot of people make fun of the art style, and I'm like, I kind of like the art style. Yeah, it aged badly. Yes, it's 90s. But it's almost like saying, oh, I don't like the classic Mickey look because it's from the 50s, and that was a long time ago, and the 50s don't matter. And I'm like, yeah, but I kind of like that 50s art style. It's the same cheesy reason I like these art. Like, this guy has oh my God, I don't even want to. We'll get into it when we talk about the characters. Some of these outfits are ridiculous. Let's talk about development first. While most places online list Eternal Champions being developed by SEGA, including Wikipedia, the studio responsible for the game was actually SEGA Interactive Development Division, SID with 2 Ds for short. Ooh. And it had a few other names, including Interactive Designs and even Sega LA at one point. While the studio was mostly known for Eternal Champions, the studio was founded way back in 1984 by a married couple called Rod and Nancy Nakamoto under the name Interactive Designs. It's funny, though, because Rod Nakamoto, if you actually look up his name and you put Sega and, you know, use Google, he has a public Facebook profile and, like... So he's still around. He's still posting. He has a list of like a gajillion companies he's founded. So Rod would build a company from the ground up to 50 employees for nearly a decade and work with publishers such as EA, Activision, Sierra Online, Data East, Cinemaware, Capcom, Nick, Sega, and Disney. Near the end of 1992, Sega would go on to acquire the studio because they were basically using the studio to full capacity when they were developing Green Dog, the beached surfer dude. According to Moby Games, I think Rod actually did the editing for this because it's like he had 65 employees under Sega Interactive, made 26 SQs, and brought in a revenue exceeding $250 million.
Interesting.
I think we talked about the studio a little bit in our Star Wars arcade episode. They made one. They made the Star Wars the arcade on 32X, I think. So, you know what? Like when I looked at the Wikipedia, and you can see their softography on their Wikipedia page. This is very much one of those studios where they're like, I don't know, like a lot of misses. Their only big hit was Eternal Champions that really brought in money. They handled licensed games. It seemed like they were one of the studios that would do a lot of like early ports to computers or something like that. I think that's mostly what they did. What's your opinion on these type of studios? And also, if they're making $250 million, you would think that, you know, they wouldn't be closed all of a sudden, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know my opinion on these types of studios. I don't really know. I mean, what's your opinion?
Yeah,
I think they're interesting.
They're interesting in Sega's, but it's one of those studios where it's like you were like basically next to these studios that were pumping out hits. Like even though when we talk about those Japanese studios, like they were doing Alex Kidd, you'll see their gamography, and you'll be like, oh, I see that game was pretty popular, even though I didn't like it. Or this game was with this studio. I'm like, oh, you had a Star Wars game, you had the license, okay,
right?
Yeah, and then you were like, oh, Eternal Champions, and then you see, oh, that's it. You had no one's gonna remember the Green Dog, the surfer dude. That's all.
Right. I mean, well, I guess my take on these types of companies is it's a business to them. It's, you know, this isn't like there's some more art house. I mean, this is no Warp. You know, it's not like D2. They're pumping out like super personal stuff from a singular vision. It's not even like, I would say, STI, where it's just amazing game creators making amazing games. It seems more like a studio that's just trying to make money in an industry that's a good place to make money in. And they did well. I mean, but if this wasn't a Nintendo podcast, I think we would be talking about a lot of LJN games. And I wouldn't say this is like an LJN level company, but it's, I don't know, it's kind of getting there. I don't know. There's some stuff on their gamography that makes me raise my eyebrows and go, really?
Yeah, it feels like it's one of those studios that Sega kind of wanted to build up to do something grand and saw something there.
Right.
And I don't know, I don't think it worked out because I feel like I said, their only big hit was Eternal Champions.
I remember renting Bonkers and hating it. I remember I owned Tailspin and thinking it's kind of a janky game. Like the music freezes constantly because too many enemies fill the screen. You know, it's just Garfield games.
And it's like Eternal Champions. The controls are stiff. The AI leveling is not that great. It's like they had some aspects of game design. Like I think they were probably better at making the product look good than it was actually playing good. I think that was the issue with this studio. But yeah, it's one of those weird studios that we don't talk about a lot. I will say that Sega Interactive as a name was brought back in the 2010s by Sega for their, I guess, movie division, I think it was, or was it their arcade games? But they also, again, Sega Interactive is not a thing anymore, but it was a thing for a while, for like a few years ago. So I think they retired it in 2020 when they did the restructuring, but yeah. So usually when we talk about video game development stories, usually like for these kind of games, there's not that much info to go on. And it probably would have been like that if it wasn't for a few interviewers that actually took their time out to talk to people from the studio. Arcade Attack Retro Gaming Network on YouTube has some great audio podcasts with some of the people from the studio, and Sega 16 did some like 15 years ago. Really great interviews, written out.
Nice.
I will say though that some of the most interesting interviews came from Scott Bearfield, who did the original 10-page script for the game. I actually looked up more info on Barefield after and apparently him and Michael Latham, who actually became the producer, they got in a fight because Michael actually changed everything about the game that he actually wrote. And this is what he had to say about the game Scott did after he left Sega and quit the company because of the changes. He said, the game, it was boring. The art was boring. The controls sloppy. It felt like it was developed by people who had never played a fighting game in their lives. The product that shipped had only 3 things in common with the original concept as approved. It was a fighting game. It had the same name. Shadow, the female assassin, was the original concept and in the final product. The original idea was to go way over the top and make really crude, funny, and artistically striking game with really tight controls, basically ripping off Street Fighter 2's control scheme. The characters were all designed after an artist named Simon Beasley, who I think he did the Lobo stuff, like that kind of art. I tried to get Simon to do the art, but he was booked for more than a year doing comics and couldn't do it. The characters were supposed to be larger than life, heroic types, but with humor. For example, the barbarian fighter had flies buzzing around him at all times, and his idle animation, including scratching inappropriately. We also were going to have mini games for training your character. These were all really very silly, based on abusing dwarves, not human dwarves. These were nasty, brutish, etc. Imagine X-Men Danger Room with dwarves with knives. Basically, basically the game shit sucked all the flavor out of the game concept, and while they did some sort of innovative control things, the execution was sloppy. The CD version was improved, but I think they made a pretty blah product. So he obviously quit the company when he actually read the bigger, longer script by Michael Latham, and also he passed away last year. Michael in April 10,
That's right. Yeah.
2021. So rest in peace. And there's an interview, like I said, with Arcade Attack Retro Gaming Network that he did before he passed away, and it's actually. I listened to the whole thing, and he really goes into the idea that yes, all this stuff he said right here, these 3 like it was a fighting game, it had the same name, and they had Shadow the female assassin. Yeah, Michael went in and said, yeah, I changed it. Yep, he kind of took ownership and said that he thought he had a better idea, and that he purposely pushed it. Like he submitted it, and he's like, oh, I know they can't change everything I did on the script because it's too late into development. So he played his hand, and he said he was pretty ballsy when he was younger, and that's why he rose the ranks in Sega. So it worked out for him, right? So yeah,
right.
So and Michael also talked about how most of the script had a lot of dwarf references and like wanting to use dwarves. I don't know. So what do you think? Do you think a dwarf heroic barbarian type game would have been better than I don't know, like, because in Eternal Champions these characters come from any time period, so
right.
Yeah,
I mean, I will say a kind of dwarfish character works really well when it's an ensemble game, like Golden Axe. I think I'm blanking on his name. It's Thunderhead, right?
Yeah,
that's his name.
Yeah,
like
Gillian.
He's iconic to the point where he kept almost making the cut for All-Stars Racing and All-Stars Racing Transformed. But when you have a whole game of those types of characters, I'm not really sure what you're going for. That's kind of bizarre.
Yeah, and
with knives.
And it's like he did a 10-page one, right? So let's talk about Michael's take on it. So during development of Eternal Champions, Sega Interactive had 2 in-house teams, one named Alpha and the other Omega. Omega would be the team that would go on to develop Eternal Champions. Michael Latham would work around the clock on script and ideas for the game. He turned in over 100 pages of ideas to Sega Interactive, upsetting producer Scott. So what would someone put in a script for a 100-page script for a fighting game? Well, according to the interview, 20 pages of it were dedicated to the story. So you got to understand, Scott came in with 10 pages. And this guy's like, oh yeah, anyway, here's 100 pages. It's kind of hard to go like, hey, but those go against my 10 pages when obviously one person put in more work, more ideas. They fleshed it out. He had 20 pages of story. So just 20,
right.
It was double in length, just the story of the characters. So he obviously got the job. Scott quit. What's your opinion on in-game fighting storylines? Like I think a lot of people take them like super serious. Like, oh, I think the characters could be fun and they could add a little spice to them. But I think like going too deep might ruin it. It's kind of like Sonic. You have to have some fantasy where you could put your own thoughts, right?
I think, and I'm not jumping to the end of the podcast, but I think Eternal Champions is a very ambitious game.
Yeah.
But I think it's ambitious in almost all the wrong places. You see this often with not just video game development, but like media in general, where the creatives behind it will be super passionate about an aspect of the project, but it doesn't always shine through in the final product, especially in a fighting game where, sure, you can sit down and develop a backstory and these interconnected things for this cast of characters, and it sounds awesome and works out great, but once you execute it, especially in these older games, that doesn't come across to the player. So it's like all this time and energy spent is really just so that like a giant lizard makes a little more sense in the roster to you as the creator of the game. And my opinion on stories in fighting games, I think games like Power Stone and Virtua Fighter do it best, where it exists there, it's hinted on, you can read it in manuals, you sometimes see it in like maybe the anime adaptation or something like that, but it's not super essential. Like Pete the Puppet is a really weird Power Stone 2 character, but if you read the backstory, like everyone's place in the game makes sense and why they want the Power Stones.
Yeah.
It works. And if you pick a character that you like, you might read up on that character and go, oh, this is why Fokker is going after this. This is why Fokker's dad is in the game. I call him Fokker and not Falcon. Sorry, Americans. But in this game, like, man, 20 pages developed just for the characters. I mean, I've played some weird-ass fighting games, and I didn't need to know why characters are there. You know, it's...
I mean, yeah,
I don't know.
I agree, and you know what? Like, I'm not into the storyline of some of the characters. I like the characterization.
I know.
And those two things are different, right? People don't really get it. Like, does Sonic have a deep story? Not really. Does he have a good characterization that people like? Yes. And I think, for me, fighting games is more about the characterizations. Like, right when you pick the character, how they act by their movements, you know, and their animation, like the cocky character, you know what I mean? That to me means a lot more than having a 20-page story for the character where his mom died and his dad didn't graduate college, so he had to go to a really bad school and he didn't become the best fighter. You know, like, whatever. That doesn't matter.
That sounds like the plot for the upcoming Flash movie, I think, right?
Is that still coming out? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. In 2 or 3 years, if Ezra Miller doesn't beat up the entirety of Hawaii.
Oh my! He might move on to...
That should be a fighting game.
That should be a fighting game, so he can take him down.
Ezra Miller versus Hawaii.
So, I guess I'll read the story. I do have a page of it from the manual, but it's so hard to read on my smaller screen, so I Googled it real quick. Welcome to my chamber. I am the eternal champion, keeper of the vast fighting complex. It exists in a place and time corrupted by centuries of misuse and destruction. My purpose in this grand scheme is to maintain the balance between good and evil, light and darkness, hope and despair. Now, this balance has been lost, and the very fabric that holds the world together will be torn apart. Your future, my present, has been destroyed by a cruel and unjust twist of fate. 9 individuals from various periods in time were killed before their lives could affect this dark existence. I have observed each of their short lives and have been powerless to stop the chaos. I have spent centuries harnessing the power of this very moment, and I am pure and untouched energy of all the great martial arts masters that have lived before me. Their skill, wisdom, knowledge, and inner strengths are at my command. Even with the force of their collective powers, I can only reward one of the 9 individuals with the gift of life. Any of them can have an equally profound effect on the future. For this reason, the contest must take place. At the end of the contest, only one will remain. The victor will return to life a few seconds before his death, allowing him to avoid the past with the knowledge to change the future. Only one may live so that the balance may be again achieved. Let the contest begin. So as you can tell, it's they're summoning heroes from different points in time that were unjustly murdered. So that gives every character kind of a reason to fight, to come back to life. And that's why this game is called Eternal Champions. And you know what? I will say the name is probably one of the best things about the game, like Eternal Champions. It's like, oh, cool. It sounds like a fighting game right away. So that's one of the best things they did for the game. So as you can tell by the story, it has 9 playable characters. I would say a lot of their plots, and we'll just probably, I did put a bunch of their plots, and I'll go through a few of them, but there's so much writing, I think it'll take too much since I have 8 pages of notes and a lot of interesting stuff to look at. So we'll just kind of talk about the art style, which I think we'll be grading it like as kids looking at a start menu, and we're about to pick a character, and what goes through our mind right away when we see it. So the most popular character in this game is Shadow Yamato. She's the dominatrix.
That was Shadow the Hedgehog.
She's the also I forgot to add, most of the characters have an actual real life martial arts that they know. That's kind of like Virtual Fighter, you know. It's an actual thing. Not all of them. Yeah. So Shadow Yamato is a modern day 1993 at this time. And she was basically thrown off a building because she worked for a organization that she was gonna rat on, that she was an assassin for, and they threw her, and I'm not even kidding, it says it on her notes, from a 101st floor building. Not 100 feet, not 100 floors, 101 floors. These guys got her on top of a 101-story building and knocked her out. Was that one floor really needed to kill her? I guess so. But what's your opinion on her look?
She looks like not Marvel or DC, but like Image Comics
ripoff
superhero, I guess.
Yeah. Like, in the 90s when they were like, oh, young blood raven gas mask.
Or like what was the Daredevil Elektra movie?
Yeah. And she has a domino mask that like the Robins wear.
Nice.
And next we have this guy's name is Rax Coswell. He's a professional fighter from the year 2349. In this time period, apparently martial arts are on the way out, so fighters are putting robotic parts on themselves so they could lure people to come and see their fights. He gets a virus. He gets a virus put into him when he's fighting his championship fight, and right when he's about to get hit, the manager does it. So right when he's about to get hit, they put the virus that shuts him down, and then he gets killed by the punch. He knows Muay Thai kickboxing, and I don't know. This is actually the more interesting bit. I like the idea that like there's a moment in time where people are like, ugh, humans fighting to the death is so boring. You know what would be sick? If they had robotic parts, that way they could kill themselves faster. Well,
and I feel like we've talked about this movie on like way too many Sega talks now, but Alita Battle Angel is just like that.
Yes.
Where they're like, it's almost like boring to get these, like to us watching, we're like, oh, it's amazing. Look at that. He's just a human head. The rest is robots. And everyone else is like, oh, I see you got a new add-on. Oh yeah. Don't you like it? Oh, look how cool I look. You know?
What do you think about this guy's hair and his little bandana? He's got a little cool.
He looks like any like 80s action comic character.
Like something from the X-Men.
He looks like a character from the Marvel Star Wars comics. I'm blanking on his name. It's really bothering me because they brought him back for the new ones. Valance is his name. And he was an Imperial who was heavily damaged in battle, and they brought him back to life and gave him all these cybernetic implants and he looks like Valance. It's kind of cool.
Will you pick him?
I would, just because I like Valance.
I put Jonathan Blade, but okay, I guess this is Jonathan Blade. He's he's a former police officer from the year 2030 and was dismissed because of his short temper. He practices kinpo, something about being trapped with scientists. But I do know, though, by his looks, he reminds me of one of those like kids from those like Burger King kids meals. Remember what I'm talking about? They had the guy with the wheelchair.
Oh yeah,
you know what I'm talking about, right? Come on.
I was a member. No. I love the Burger King Kids Club. I was a
club member. They never.
Yeah, I was too. There's Kid Vid, who's the one with the remote control.
It's like a.
Oh, here I got him up here. Jaws. It's Jaws. That's his name. He's the guy who's like, I'm gonna eat those burgers.
Yeah, he looks like him if he like got the glasses from Kid Vid. You know what I mean? Like they mix them together.
Yeah. There's IQ. Lingo, Wheels. The kid in the wheelchair is named Wheels.
I know, that's so terrible.
Boomer.
That's so terrible.
Boomer is the girl who can play sports. What a boomer.
What a sports so boomer, dude.
Kid Vid was my jam, though. I love Kid Vid. Look at him in the back of the group.
He was the coolest.
Put him at the front. He's the star.
He was the coolest one. Like, they had the Hispanic kid that was just like the most normal dude. Like, he has nothing going for him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, other characters at least had something. Like, Wheels had the wheels, bro.
Well, Lingo can draw.
Oh, yeah, okay. And then you had IQ.
They should do a fighting game with the Burger King Kids Club kids.
Oh, my God, dude. That'd be awesome. Actually...
with Ezra Miller.
Missed opportunity. So this guy's name is Jonathan Blade, which is very like, I don't know, like Sonya Blade from Mortal Kombat. They're like, oh, I don't know, Jonathan Blade. Cool. He does Kinbo style. Next, we got Judith Max, which is a young Russian woman from 1899. I mean, her character, I wouldn't even know she's from the 1800s. She doesn't, like, dress like from the 1800s. She has, like, this weird, like, modern dress from, like, the last 450. Like, this dress could be from 1970 through now. You know, it's just so generic the way she's dressed. She's dressed very modern. Judith Max. So, like, I'm like, I don't know. Michael Latham, the creator, said this is one of his favorite characters because he likes Chun-Li and she's kind of an aerial character. But she's just a typical white woman. I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like the blonde white woman with the big old boobies. That's basically it. I mean, what do you think about her?
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. Just what it is, you know.
Hey, if that's a typical white woman, then
I
sign me up.
Typical white woman in the video game. I'm sorry. I don't want to put your expectations too high with random people. Because, I mean, if I don't look like Jonathan Blade, then women are going to be disappointed too. They're like, oh, okay, I thought you were wearing those cool sunglasses from Kid Vid from, no? All right, cool.
Yeah, they wanted a Kid Vid and they got a Lingo.
And so. I think here's where it starts getting interesting because I like monster characters, like Darkstalkers is my type of game, you know? And now we have Slash, which is a caveman from a 50,000 BC. He obviously does not have an actual fighting style, which when I said every character had its own fighting style, it's like, we don't know how they fought in the 50,000s, but like apparently he uses a lot of like brutal strikes. You know, he fights very barbaric. I like these kind of characters because it adds to the roster. It's like you already have a cyborg, you got two hot girls, and you got the guy from fucking Burger King Kids Club. So you got to add something to spice it up. And I think this is cool, like a what do they say? Those monster. Those 18, 19, 20, what were they called? Warner Brother monster movies or whatever? It kind of reminds me of that.
Oh, the Universal Monsters.
The Universal Monster, not Warner Brothers. My bad. We also got Trident, which this is my favorite character and the most iconic one, which is funny because everyone says Shadow is, but when I saw this, I always remembered this game because of him, because I don't know, you never see a sea creature like this in a fighting game back then. It was always like skull. Look at this guy, Killer Instincts. This guy's a alien with skulls on him. Yeah, all right. But Trident, cool. I like him.
Yeah.
The next guy is Xavier Pendragon, who is a humble scholar, man, my dude, and he knows alchemy. He's basically the wizard character, and like Look how evil he is. Look at his eyes, dude.
I love it.
Would you pick this guy? I think he's a little too scary.
No,
hell no. I wouldn't be like, the fuck. Why is he smiling? Why? You're holding a snake. Why are you smiling? Have you ever seen anyone hold a snake and smile before? Nope, never in my life.
I wouldn't trust anyone like that.
Mitchell
Ever.
Middleton Knight. He's a white. He kind of looks like the Witcher with a metal hand. He does Jeet Kune Do, the fighting style of Bruce Lee, which is kind of weird because he's not the type of character that would fight like Bruce Lee, in my opinion. You know, he's wearing a trench coat. He looks like I don't know, evil. I don't know. I have no idea how you would even describe him. He's weird.
He's like, yeah, he's an interesting fellow.
I will say that Xavier Pendragon and the next guy after this guy, the wizard we talked about, and
right.
This guy, Larson Taylor, they all got side games, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and so did Shadow.
Yeah.
He's an ex-cat burglar from 1920s Chicago and worked for the Chicago mob. As you could tell,
that's right.
This is what people in Chicago dress like. I haven't been there, but if I did, it'd probably. I mean, this is how you dress, right? When you're not in your room right now, right?
I do. There's actually a hat shop downtown Chicago where I could probably get a hat that looks just like that. And maybe I'll do it.
And do you know Southern style Kung Fu?
I do.
You do? Okay. Just wondering. All right. So, yes.
That's what I was practicing at the beginning. I was kind of like trying to...
So, if you had to pick one of these characters to be your favorite champion, your eternal champion, which one would we be picking?
Ah, man. This is a tough one. I'd probably have to go with the hometown hero.
Oh, yeah?
And pick Larson. Yeah. I have to do it. He looks like Dick Tracy. I love Dick Tracy.
Michael, the producer, said that he also liked him because he grew up in Chicago. So there you go. Yeah, I was gonna go with Trident just because I like Hellboy. Monsters are cool. Underrated. Monsters are underrated. Let's just say that
they are.
Gameplay wise, you know what? This is a weird game to talk about gameplay wise because it really did not try to change anything. Fighting games, it really went with what was happening. So I think Eternal Champions had a lot of things going for it in terms of art, ideas behind the characters, really setting the mood for what type of game it wanted to be. But I think the part it actually falls short is the controls. The game is super influenced by Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat. According to Latham, the team didn't want to turn off fighting games by trying to reinvent the wheel with their own type of gameplay. And what's your opinion on this? Well, growing up, a lot of games that we played basically all played the same. Mario kind of did, some stuff with platforming, and everybody else is like, well, it's working, so we're gonna copy the basics. Like once you picked up a Sonic game, you kind of figured out every other kind of game like that, right? What's your opinion on not? I personally like the idea of not reinventing the wheel. Like if something works, you just change it. In my opinion.
Well, I mean, I think with any genre, you obviously are targeting players who enjoy that type of game. And so if you are changing the gameplay to the point of someone pick up and playing a fighting or a racing game because they're a fan of that genre and they just can't get into it because they're like, wait, I have to relearn everything? What the hell's going on with this? And I'm trying to think of a game that maybe does that. I would say maybe Wonderful 101. It is a game that when you read about it, you're like, oh, I've kind of played games like this before. This sounds fun. It's like a 3D beat 'em up, right? But with a bunch of characters. That's interesting. And then you pick up and play and you're like, wait, I don't know how to play this game. To the point where they had 15-minute long instructional videos that true fans would be like, you got to watch the video first, Oh, yeah. I think the best games of the genres are pick up and play, but introduce something new or perfect it to the point of being the ultimate pure whatever. So in my opinion, Virtua Fighter is the ultimate pure 3D fighter. There's no fatalities. There's no big bouncy boobies. the gimmick, there is no real like gimmick outside of it just being a pure fighter. And same goes with, I guess, Daytona USA. I think Sega kind of, for a time, was becoming the company that made the ultimate pure version of that game. Like Sonic, one could argue, is like the purest platformer out there. Because while Mario is a great platformer, Sonic brings this element of speed into it and like pinball physics. And you could call those gimmicks, but to me, it almost felt like Mario was the one lacking. And Sonic was the one that really brought everything I expected from a platformer. And so with this, going back to Eternal Champions, like, if Eternal Champions was the ultimate 2D fighter, then we would be talking. But to me, it didn't really bring any gimmicks, and it didn't really bring any ultimate 2D fighting, to the point of just being kind of a generic 2D fighter with a lot of emphasis put on the backstory. A game I want to... A weird comparison, Alpha Protocol. We talked about that recently. That is a game from a studio that had some bold ideas, and they implemented it, and the game was not perfect, but at the very least in that game, like, the bold ideas shone through to the point of some people really loving the game. I'd be interested to see if there are hardcore Eternal Champions fans out there. I mean, I don't know if Joaquin, who picked this, is a hardcore fan, but I'd be interested to know his thoughts, because for me playing this game, it's just an okay game. But then again, just like how every movie has one person in the world who will claim that's their favorite movie, every video game has someone out there who will point to that and say, that's my favorite game, no matter the game. They exist,
This game actually had a lot of promotion before release, which is kind of interesting, because usually when we talk about these kind of games, it's like, oh yeah, they had a couple commercials, whatever. This game, actually, Sega really did push it. They thought it was going to be the next big thing. The first thing we're going to look at here is the 7-Eleven promotion. Sega teamed up with 7-Eleven stores in the United States. According to here on the thing, they did it at 5,900 locations. They made a Sega Eternal Champions cherry flavor that came with a cup featuring characters from the game. And on the bottom of the cup, there was a tattoo that you could put on so you could be, really cool. Dude, my dad used to hate. That's neat. My dad used to hate temporary tattoos. He thought that if I got a temporary tattoo, I would want one in real life. And I'm like, well, of course I want a tattoo. They're sick. That's why everyone had temporary tattoos. Part of the promotion was also to run, I guess, the promotion on MTV, but I never saw footage of it, and I tried to look for it, but no, I couldn't. But it is mentioned on the ad right here somewhere that it will be featured on MTV. So the first picture we have is the ad, which is kind of funny though, because this ad right here, the 7-Eleven, ran in Sega Visions, and right next to it is the Sega movie thing where Sega and MGM did a whole contract. They were going to make a Sonic the movie or whatever. Never happened, but yeah, it was funny that I just saw it. Here's the cup. This is the Judith Max cup. I actually think the cups are nice looking. On the ad, they make it seem like it's one of those like cardboard cups, but then it's an actual plastic cup. And then here are the temporary tattoos. And then I also have a picture of the art of the characters that are on the tattoos, all of them, all 1, 2, 8, 9 of them. I thought there was gonna be one missing, but yeah, no, 9. So, what's your opinion on this promotion? Like, personally, I don't know. It's a lot because, like, in my lifetime, I only remember big movies getting this kind of, like, exposure, right? Like, a 7-Eleven Slurpee flavor. Like, is there any other moment that is not Sonic that a game's gotten this type of promotion?
I can't think of any Sega ones that got a 7-Eleven Slurpee promotion, but, I mean, you know me, I'm a sucker for, like, food promos.
Yeah.
And when Deadpool, I think it was one, might have been two, I think was coming out, they did a really cool 7-Eleven promotion where there were Slurpee cups to collect, where he like did different things. Like one, he crossed out slurp, so it just said P. And then there were also 7-Eleven exclusive gummy hands, sour gummy hands. Because remember, he cuts his hands off and then he has to regrow them, and he has little baby hands. And I mean, if any Sega game were ever to do that, I'd be there like day one collecting all the cups and getting like the special Sonic hand gummies. You know what I mean? I think, and the thing is that it's the exposure. Like 7-Eleven and McDonald's have a broader reach than any other like chain in the, not just the country, but like the world. So to have a promotion there is a huge deal. And that's why I've been so excited for the Sonic 2 McDonald's promotion, because that's insane. I drive past at least like 10 McDonald's. Yeah. And I look out the window, I'm like, there's Sonic. There's Sonic. That's the most I've ever seen Sonic since like the early 90s. It's insane.
He's everywhere right now.
And so to give Eternal Champions 7-Eleven promotions, this game was everywhere. This game had more exposure than like some really good Genesis games deserved. You know what I mean?
Like Streets of Rage.
Why was
like Streets?
Why wasn't Streets of Rage doing this?
This is what I don't understand. It was like, obviously Sega of America is like, this is our product and we want to be big.
But we've seen this before, George. We've seen this when we started with Sega Bits, because Sega of America they go through this cycle where they're like, we're the happy company that brings in the Japanese titles, we localize them, and we make our money. But they get a little they get the itch, you know. They're like, what if we were the ones making the games and we were the ones making all the money? And then Japan looks to us and goes, oh, you Americans are really showing us.
Yeah.
And they did that again with Iron Man. They tried to make Marvel games. They tried to do the Golden Compass. Like, Sega wanted to be like the movie studio game publisher.
They even did
so weird.
They even did a fighting game with the guys that did the Conduit. Remember on the Wii? I forgot what it was called though. It just like came out of nowhere.
That's right.
That one did not have a 7-Eleven release. I'll tell you that. They also did a promotion with they were teaming up with EGM magazine, and they did this like short United States video game roaming show where they would do a tournament. Since this was early in the development of the game, only 4 characters were playable: Larson, Slash, Rax, and Shadow. Nice. Outside of that, I mean, they have the dates here, and it's like 5-6 dates, and it's not even one in California. So is that really a tour? I don't know. I mean, I think it's like pretty small, but these kind of like live events where people could play them was like very 90s. I don't know if this is something that will ever happen again now that we have like conventions and people gather in one spot. Back then, they would be like, oh, your local mall? Yeah, Sega's coming over next week, and they're going to be playing the next Sonic game or whatever. And it's like, what? Yes.
And with digital games, too, like nowadays, it's just like,
put the demo out.
We'll send you a digital code, a demo. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a funny bit, but yeah, this is a product of its time. But I never went to any of these events for Sega back in the day, and I always wish, like, what would it have been like to go to these, like, early Sega events, you know? Like, just at these weird malls that they randomly just had workers show you games, but...
Is this the commercial with Dawn soap at the beginning?
Eternal Champions is going to eat your old fighting games for lunch.
They changed the name of it.
No wonder. It has 9 huge warriors, 3 training modes, and over 315 martial arts modes. Bon appetit. Eternal Champions, only on Sega Genesis.
I remember this ad playing, and I remember thinking to myself, do you think games, do you think that really happens, you know? Like, games even know? I don't know, it was weird. Like, it was just a weird ad. Like, the fact that it was like moving around and stuff, the animation, it always creeped me out and it made me think, how do they do this? How do they make the box as a kid, you know? It's like, how would I film it? And that... Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, looking at that trailer, like, it makes me realize that what they should have done with Eternal Champions, the gimmick should have been that all the fighters were from different comic books, and it basically would have been a Comic Zone spin-off, and you have that guy as one of the fighters, but then all the others are like a character from a horror comic, and then a character from like a kid's cartoon comic, and then like a superheroine from like a Image Comics kind of ripoff. Like, they should have done that. That would have been cool.
That actually would have been pretty cool. Like, the idea that it's from different media, so to be like, you know how they already had, we had that one 1920s Chicago guy, right? Oh, he could have been from...
Right, so he could have been Dick Tracy ripoff.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then, like, you could have done, like, a Sonic the Hedgehog spoof where it's like a little
mascot
cartoon guy coming in. Yeah, and you'd been like, wait, that's like Garfield, you know, or something weird like that.
Dude, SEGA from 1993, hire us. We're over here. We'll give you a 235-page script. Even better, dude. Even better. Anyway, the next one is this really annoying guy talking about video games really close to your face.
I hate this ad.
I hate this ad too, but let's play it and hate it.
Oh, his eyes.
Pretty much know what to expect from Eternal Champions.
Wait, what's with his eyes? I know it
maybe
moves.
You see, 9 huge warriors.
Worst ad.
And they've got more ways than ever to kick your butt.
Does this make you want to buy the game, by the way?
You may never look at
No, it
other
makes
fighting
me
games
like
the same
nervous
way.
because his eyes are moving around on his head.
Welcome to the next level, dude. This is how it is with SEGA.
I don't like this.
This is probably one of the myths.
I don't like that. That makes me want to vomit at the end where his ear is on his nose. Holy... I can't look at this.
It bothers you?
I'm going to screen capture what I just paused, and I'm just going to throw it up on our Twitter with no comment. And I want to see what people...
Oh, is this that Eternal Champions commercial that I like so much?
I'm just going to say Happy Monday. And I'm just going to throw that up there. So if you're watching this, you can look at my Monday post and see this image. Oh my God.
This is what happens when you play
Don't show me
Eternal
this.
Champion.
I hate it.
Good. The next ad we have is a print cocky ad. Basically, to prepare for Eternal Champions, use Street Fighter 2 as your training wheels. And obviously this is playing up the fact that, I mean, I guess there's always been this whole like hardcore image, you know, like, oh, that's for babies, that game right there. And always playing down your competition that way. Obviously, Street Fighter's a lot better than Eternal Champions. Sorry, but what's your opinion on this ad?
I hate
though, like the layout.
I hate this. Well, I hate that form of advertising when you're bashing the competition, but you haven't proven yourself yet. Because if you are a bad game, then you just look like garbage. Like, imagine if in the lead up to Morbius releasing, they were like, sorry kids, Sonic 2 is going in the trash. It's Morbius time. And then like the movie comes out and you're like, oops. Guess not.
I know, can you imagine? They're like, you saw Spider-Man, more like garbage, man. And then you
imagine if the Morbius trailers leading up to it bashed another Sony movie and they're like, no way home, more like no way homie. And it's like, guys, this is our movie too, we're all the same studio. No way Morbius is here, screw Spider-Man.
I would say that you're really like going down a fine line when you're making fun of like another, you know, game, and like SEGA did it too, and sometimes I'm like, not this time, but there's some times where SEGA would be like, all right, I see what you're doing here. Like, it worked because you actually had video games. Like, you had Sonic the Hedgehog. It would be weird if it was like Green Dude, Kid Chameleon, a weird boxing game you made, and then like some other random game that sucked, and you're like, oh, Nintendo sucks. They got Super Mario Kart. Psh.
Right, but it worked when they did the Sonic comparison. Remember, they're like, what's that over there? The two TVs, and it'd be like, oh, this is Super Mario World. What's that one? You don't want to look at that. It's just Sonic the Hedgehog. You know, like, and, that worked.
I think it also, I mean, in context of that time period, there was a lot of, like, articles and, like, I guess, media press talking about how the Sega Genesis didn't have enough colors to stand up to the Super Nintendo, so, like, that's why that commercial worked so well, because you see them side to side, and even now as a gamer, like, I like Mario, I like the Super Nintendo, but there's just something weird and special about the way that they designed Sonic the Hedgehog and the way it looks and the colors they used and how vibrant it looks. Yes, it has less colors, but I don't think it matters. But yeah, no, I agree. It works sometimes, not this time. I agree with that one. So, regardless of the game having less than stellar reviews, the game would go on to be the best-selling game for the UK in February of 1994. It actually went on to sell 2 million copies. I didn't put it in the notes, but according to the team, it did over 2 million copies, which in this time period is a huge accomplishment. EGN's writers were mixed, but the magazine still gave the game a 91%, considering that Sega actually paid them to do promotion. Who knows how much of this came to, with the score. The game, according to the creators, I already said that. Yeah, and it did get some spin-offs and tie-ins, which we'll talk about very little here. So the first one we got is Eternal Champion Special Move Edition by Tiger Electronics. Was part of their Pocket arcade line of LCD handhelds. This was actually the first one in the series and was designed by cartoonist I.B. Nelson. In about a month. What's your history with Tiger Electronics? What's your opinion on these kind of like tie-in toys they used to make back in the day?
Right, yeah. So one of my earliest Tiger Electronic toys was the Sonic 2 Tiger game. I have it up on my shelf behind me there. I also had the Nightmare Before Christmas one. And I think Tiger Electronic games are at their best when they kind of play like Game & Watch. Yeah. Where they're a very simple game made specifically for that sort of LCD setup. The Sonic one is actually pretty playable, but the one that actually is really fun is the Nightmare Before Christmas one, because it's more of a kind of timing game where you're going across rooftops, and if you see a chimney, you drop a present, and if something's above you, you duck. It's very simple. Fighting games, though, I think do not translate well to these types of games, especially when they have different players you select, because what they do is they have a base body, and then the arms and legs are typically like the same for everyone. Even like the women will have male arms and legs, and then the heads will change just by like the face will be here, but then they'll put a ponytail on the top. And so it doesn't really look like the character from the game because they have one base body for like a dozen or... Yeah, exactly. I actually own a ton of the Pocket Arcade games. I don't own this one, but I do have Knights, Virtua Fighter. What else do I have? I have a racing one. I have Sonic 3. And so I haven't played them all because I actually have never opened them. I found them at a discount store in like the early 2000s for $1.79 each, and at that time even I knew like these are collector's items. I'm like, Nights into Dreams Tiger game unopened, I'm gonna leave this sealed. But what I really like about the Pocket Arcade ones though is that they did these like flip phone sort of gimmicks. So this one's unique. I've never seen the screen pivoting out.
I was gonna ask,
but I can imagine it's sweet. Like imagine folding that in and then just push that button and it comes out. I like that. I think that's cool.
It swivels out,
yeah, it swivels.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
But I bet they didn't stick with this because when you have the screen on a pivot thing like that, it can cause problems. There are electronics connecting there, and if you move them enough times, like the cables will stop sending, power to the screen. So they probably stopped doing these for that reason.
And this one also has Jonathan Blade on the cover, which is funny that everyone said Shadow was like the most known character, but like Jonathan Blade is always on almost every piece of promotional material. That's what the interesting bit is. Outside of this, do you think there's a lot of Tiger electronic collectors out there? Is there a market for it, kind of like Funko Pop or Pez?
I don't know if it's at Funko Pop levels, but probably, maybe not even Pez, but there is a collector's community out there now. I think Tiger Electronics toys were utter garbage up until the 2010s when, this always happens with video game collecting. There will be a niche that is super cheap and easy to get into. And then once enough people realize it's there, the prices go up and then people get priced out of it. For the longest time, Sega Master System was super cheap to collect. I was going to stores and they wouldn't even put them on shelves. They'd just go, oh yeah, we got a stack in the back. And I'd go and I'd buy like Amazing RPGs for $5 each. Now those games are put behind the shelf in plastic for $500. And I'm honestly, I don't think any Tiger games are super expensive now. Dreamcast is super expensive. I just saw a guy yesterday saying that he was trying to buy VMUs and he offered the guy $100 for a plain white VMU and a plain see-through red VMU, which is like super common. Yeah. And I'm like, $100 for no caps on them and they're 2 VMUs? Those things are like
$10. They were like $5. You'd be able to buy 2 brand new ones on Amazon for like $12, like way less, like in box. Like I'm saying brand new, like see-through green, see-through blue, the blue one they did. I picked up a few just to have the boxes because I didn't have the boxes on the other ones, but whatever. That's how the market is. I was talking about the game you played. Sega would give the team another chance with a semi-sequel, and I call it semi-sequel because that's what the team called it, for Sega CD called Eternal Champions Challenge from the Dark Side, which Latham said wasn't their full idea for the sequel, but was part 2 of the trilogy the team pitched to Sega. I don't want to get too much into the game details because we might do an episode in the future, who knows, but I will say it's a terrible cover. Like, this cover, if I just saw it randomly in like a store shelf, I'm like, is this a Chinese menu? Am I going to eat some food here? But what's your opinion on the cover for the Sega CD?
Yeah, it does look like a Chinese menu.
Yeah. It's even worse on the...
it's very boring.
In the UK one, they like use these weirdly bad CGI models that look even worse, so... Huh.
But you can see why I thought this was like the equivalent of Mickey Mania on Sega CD, where it was just an updated version. Because Challenge from the Dark Side does not read as a sequel name. It just reads like a slogan.
Yeah.
Even
when they did like Street Fighter Alpha, you knew it was a new game, So my thing is like they needed something to make it seem like a new game. Also, how little effort they put into the front cover probably gave you that idea too. It's like, oh yeah, here you go. So the game would actually go on to have 2 released spin-off titles set in the game's alternative universe. The first one was Chicago Syndicate, an action game on the Game Gear in 1995. This was the story of Larson when he did not die in the 1920s and seeks revenge against the mafia. The second was X-Pert, which almost sounds like pervert or like, I don't know, like Sexpert or something.
Sexpert or Qbert.
Yeah, it's a weird name. But a side-scrolling beat-em-up from 1996. Same idea as the Chicago Syndicate. This one is Shadow never died, and she seeks revenge against the Syndicate. Have you played these games? Have you heard much about these games? Because, like, I'm always shocked when I hear about them.
No. I've never heard of these, and even if I have seen them, I would have just skimmed right by them, not knowing that they are Eternal Champions spin-offs. And I think what they needed to do was have a logo, kind of like the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, where they're just like the world of Eternal Champions.
A Star Wars story.
Or a Star Wars story. Yeah, like, well, just the Star Wars logo in general. You're like, well, that's Star Wars. Yeah. But, when The Mandalorian was first announced, they did not have the Star Wars logo on it. And then I think they were like, we got to put that on there. We can't make a show without the Star Wars logo.
I have to agree. And
Yeah.
Also, like, the Chicago Syndicate, I would have, like if I never played Eternal Champions, I only saw posters, and then I saw the Chicago Syndicate, I'd be like, is this, like, it looks like a Dick Tracy ripoff game, you know what I mean? and then X-Perts. None of the character, like Shadow on the cover, is literally wearing a white dress. Like, it doesn't even look like her from the video game at all. Like, outside of the domino mask that she had on, but so that's kind of weird. Okay, here we go. We have Eternal Champions also had 2 adventure books. Can you believe this? Where readers could take control of the newest champions that travel through time, helping other in-game characters battle crazy AI called the Overlord. Obviously, the wizard character and Larson got their own books. Who's this Penguin publisher? They're pretty big because I've seen them in big books. So I just can't remember their name right now. They published it. They have a little cute penguin logo with a circle.
Yeah, that's Penguin. Yeah.
So I mean, it's weird, like how much content there is for the Eternal Champions universe. That's the crazy bit about this whole thing that I learned when I was researching this.
Well, you know, when I just recently interviewed the guy who wrote the Sonic movie novelizations, and they were for Penguin Random House. So Penguin books. Penguin did a lot of Sonic books.
Did they? I guess they did a lot of video game. I thought they only did like classic literature, like Eternal Champions Adventure Game Book #1 and #2.
They did Sonic Adventure game books too.
Oh yeah,
that same series had Sonic books.
Huh. Well, it's weird that Eternal Champions was next to like Sonic. It's like, I guess Sega of America really did believe a lot in Eternal Champions. They also got a where is it at here? Well, they got a comic book basically called Eternal Champions Special Edition, and it was part of the Sonic the Comic from the UK that focused on the new video game. It was basically a promotional issue. It was released between Sonic issues number 19 and 20. But there was like literally no tie-in to Sonic. It was literally just made to promote the video game in the UK. The art's cool. Mm-hmm. The cover looks cool. I mean, it is what it is. I never read this. I don't know what it's about. But a lot of video games back then had these like comic book tie-ins. We did I think Shinobi we talked about having one. And I think, I forgot what other one. But regardless, they're kind of toss-aways. Has there ever been a comic book like this that they released that made you go, oh, okay, I'm getting this video game now?
You know, I read the Virtua Fighter comic years before actually playing Virtua Fighter. And I kind of remember wanting to play the game. I also read a gelatin comic book that made me really like Jell-O.
Oh, really? That's sick. I didn't know that.
Jell-O Man. They turned a box of Jell-O into a person.
I have to read that. Maybe I'll change my mind on Jell-O.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan, but I'm a minor fan.
You will be.
The next bit is actually kind of an interesting bit and kind of like has some controversy on the internet. Sega for a while still wanted to continue Eternal Champions, the brand, and even had Eternal Champions, the final chapter, planned for the Sega Saturn. According to Latham, the game only had a 20-page concept art script thing before being canned by Sega Japan, who did not want competition for Virtua Fighter, which to me is kind of weird. Maybe somebody told them that. What's your opinion on that? Like, do you really think that Sega Japan was like, oh, this game that sold 2 million copies, yeah, don't make a third one? Or do you think that the side games, the adventure books, all this other media they put into it, do you think they just bombed? Because like,
maybe they saw that it just was not paying off. It was so much effort for something that was just not seeing the results that they were expecting. I mean, I think Eternal Champions is kind of like being treated like as the Sonic boom of its time. Yeah. Like they're like, let's do comic books, let's do these promotions. And, you know, there are aspects of it that do well enough to continue on, but like clearly the games were not that. And clearly the comics, like I don't think anything really stuck with Eternal Champions, unfortunately. It's not like we're looking back and going, well, at least the comic books were awesome.
And another thing that kind of makes me think no is like Sega AM2 couldn't release enough fighting games on the Sega Saturn. Like Literally, I'm surprised. There was a Sonic for the fighting. There was like they did that. They did Virtua Fighter. They did Virtua Fighter Kids. They did, you know what I mean? Was that Bronx Rumble? Was it Last Bronx? There was virtual fighting Vipers, you know, and then fighting Mega Mix, etc. All this on Sega Saturn, and they're like Eternal Champ. Nah, we're good. You stay over there. So I don't know. Maybe there's something else going on, but this is around the time the studio went under, so maybe that also has something to do with it. The idea would be that the final chapter would have a second set of fighters called the Infernals, and then a third force added called the Chaos, who would basically fight for the timeline on both ends. And they even said it was going to have a 30 possible endings, so you could affect time. It would change the ending. The only look we actually got on the game was on early Sega Saturn boxes. Down here on the bottom right hand corner of a box, there was a little picture with this like Magneto looking guy with his white hand on the screen. After that, we never got anything from it ever again. It's like super tiny, huh?
Wow. Yeah, it is.
So yeah, I guess a lot of people didn't even know about this until the interview came out, and then they went in and saw the box, and they're, oh wait, he wasn't lying. It is on the box. Back in 2017, though, Michael Latham's actually wanted to come back and bring back Eternal Champions. Do you remember this? He wanted to call the idea Eternal Successors to succeed the brand. He would go online and release some test renders on the Unreal 4 engine, how he planned to make the game look. He said capturing the art style is very, very important, and he released a picture with Trident in his level, which I think he actually captured the level and the sunset look exactly like the Pixel game in 3D, which is pretty impressive for being by himself. So he had another picture of just the stage, and then he had a picture of an overkill or overt kill. What was your opinion on bringing it back? I think at the time I was a little iffy on it. I do know that people were excited about it, that grew up with it. And also they brought back Killer Instincts, which is a game that's sort of like this at the time, and it was doing all right for Microsoft. But yeah, like fighting games has kind of had a comeback in the last 5-6 years, right?
Right.
Yeah. What's your...
Yeah, I mean, if it had a competent team behind it who were, skilled in 3D fighters, I think it could have been fun. But it almost kind of gives me shades of Shenmue 3, where it's like Yu Suzuki going, I'm making a modern sequel to Shenmue. And it's like, you haven't made a game in a long time. Are you able to make this?
Oh, yeah.
There's a little bit of hesitation. And, I personally, I think Yu Suzuki did pull it off. There were some elements of Shenmue 3 I don't think were that great. But I don't know, looking at this, yeah, I'd be a little hesitant. I'd be like, it's a demo in Unreal Engine 4, but can you actually pull off an entire game? I don't know.
If he did a Kickstarter, I probably would have done it if the rewards were really good. I'm surprised he didn't try it because
True.
There was that Fighting EX layer that's a little janky and it sold a bit. Fans like it. I don't know if you ever played the Fighting EX layer games back in the day. They're basically
no.
The Street Fighter. When they made 3D Street fighting games randomly, they were called Street Fighter EX or whatever, and they were those games are literally Fighting EX layer. The same developers, they just skinned them with Capcom characters for Capcom. Basically, they're just known for being janky and you could do over the top combos. But yeah, they made a new game randomly because fans wanted it so badly, and they did an okay job at it. I mean, you're not going to get a professional Capcom fighting game from an indie developer, but I mean, I do like the art style on it. It's sad that he never actually did more with it, and we'll never see it, so that sucks. But I will say one thing that the game is known for that it's kind of surprising is, this rap group called Bone Thugs and Harmony, man?
I do,
wow.
yeah.
In their 1995 album, 1999 Internal, It's funny that it came out in 1995 and the album's called E1999. I guess Dreamcast, right? Is said to be loosely inspired by the game. Not just the title for the album, but also uses in-game samples, including the BIOS theme for the track Eternal. And the band they also, the song Crossroads, which is their most popular song. The original version of the song had the theme song, the ending theme song playing as a sample. That Crossroads song would go on to get remixed and become the group's biggest single and earn them a Grammy. So something out of Eternal Champions actually won a Grammy in the end. You know, that's crazy. Not a lot of Sega games could say that they helped make a Grammy. And also,
good for
Bone
them.
Thugs and Harmony has that song First of the Month, which has this like shot of a gas station showing 99 cents or like less than $1 gas, and it makes me like cry. I'm like, oh my god, imagine if gas was $1 today. I wouldn't be here right now. Anyway, that's all the notes I have for this episode. Anything you want to add before we close it up and read the Patreon memories?
I guess, this game existed at a time and a place in Sega's history where they were trying to be more than what they were, especially in the Americas and I guess European regions. And it didn't pay off, but I'm glad that this game has its fans. And to be quite honest, it got a lot more than I think it deserved, which its fans probably appreciated.
Oh, yeah.
Getting novels, comics. I mean, think of all the games that we loved that had one release and didn't see anywhere near this level of, promotion.
Star Heroes, so imagine that if they actually did a bunch of cool stuff like that in America.
Oh my god, that'd be insane. Yeah. Should I read the memories of our Patreon pals? All right, well, if you support us on Patreon at any level, you get to share your memories and we read them at the end of the show. So we have two here. We have one from Ben Hayward. He says, it really made me laugh to see the Patreon post call this an almost but forgotten game because my only Eternal Champions memory involves literally forgetting this game. It's one of the preloaded games on one of my @Games Mega Drive clones, but I didn't realize, and I then went and picked up the cart from a local secondhand store. I guess I have double the incentive to get in and play it properly. My initial read of the manual turned me off a bit as the move sets and various combinations of moved seems a little complex. I really like the classic Mortal Kombats and am particularly fond of just spamming the same moves over and over again. It seemed that this game doesn't work quite that way. Still, you've given me a good reason to give it a proper try. I think I own one of the @games. I should plug it in and see if it has this game on it. Sam Torres says, really? Eternal Champions right after Anarchy Reigns? Can I get a side of Iron Phoenix? Well, no, that's not the next one. But I remember looking forward to EC's release, buying it at my local EB Games, but having to sit through Sister Act 2 before I could go home and open it up to see what it was like. My first several battles were losses. It felt like I was losing back-to-back bouts against Midnight. Boom. Then the Vietnam stage overkill happens to me. I was totally impressed. About 2 days of learning moves and getting used to the somewhat slower than Street Fighter 2 timing down, I made it to the Eternal Champion. Got rocked. Still love this game to this day. Wish the Saturn sequel would got its day, but I'm grateful the internal team at Sega did what they did. They have my respect. Shadow Yamoto Slurpee Pog is still on my wish list.
There you go.
Cheers.
And
see, so we did find a fan.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff you could collect, and like you have 2 side game spin-offs. You got the Sega CD game. You got 2 adventure books to read. A lot of Eternal Champion stuff to collect and keep in your room.
Yeah.
What are we covering next time?
We are going to be talking about Vanquish.
Ooh, I played that game.
The Platinum Games classic. Yeah, I need to get back into playing that. I haven't played that in years. But
I beat it.
It's over 10 years old now.
Yeah, I beat it recently for the 10th year anniversary. You're in for a treat. It's actually a pretty good game. It's not too long, so I think you'll enjoy it.
No. Yeah, I have, and I will again.
Thank you guys for watching.
And you will.
Catch you guys on the next episode of Sega Talk. Bye.
Bye.